When we're looking at very young kids, obviously, one of the first ways that we want to look at helping kids be independent is in the development of language. So for some kids, again, as you know, many kids can be verbal. Other kids nowadays are communicating through apps on a phone, through different types of technological advances and everything. They might be typing their responses. They might be able to do PECs or do PECs on an application. So the fact is that we want to get the children to be independent and be able to go into a store as early as they can and type in, a picture of whatever it is that they want if they're not able to vocalize it themselves. And that's really where our initial focus is, because that ability to communicate with others is what's going to allow them to kind of integrate into the environment and have more independence. When we're looking at different things, in terms of things that you can do to help kind of encourage some language independence, one of the things that I do not like is kind of the whole, the child comes into my office and the parents say hi to Dr. Laurie, and the child will say, hi, but I always kind of say, you might want to just model saying hi, and then just kind of look at the child like it's your turn. Or another thing, like when I have a child who's kind of grabbing for my water, rather than saying anything, I'll always say, oh, that's my water. But I accent the word water to try and get the child to then say water, even if it's just mimicking. And then it's like, oh, now I know what you want. You used a word, here's the water. But I think that we produce over-prompting and over-dependence when we're always saying, say this, say that, and stuff like that. We really want to try and encourage, again, no matter how the child is communicating, we want to try and encourage that spontaneity as much as we can. Like I said before, helping your child understand what they need and then having them state it. So, for instance, if your child really does need space in school, that instead of you going in and say it, that you help your child do it. So you say, you know what, you go in and tell Mrs. Ray, I need my space. Type it out for her. Let's do a social story about how you need space, and you can take it in, and you be the one to give it to Mrs. Ray. And then it's the child. All of this is coming from the child. They're the ones that are in kind of control of saying, this is what I need, and then getting what they need, and seeing that they can have some, that they can be an active part of this rather than just a passive participant. Giving your kids a job, as I said before, and referring to things as a job, like they're the ones who are going to talk to the doctor or something like that. So again, I know a lot of times when parents take their child to the doctor, they're the ones who do a lot of the talking, and sometimes that might be because your child can't express what's going on, but once they can, they should be the ones who are able to say, the medication makes me feel sleepy, or something like that. They feel uncomfortable doing that, that's fine. Then you work on getting them to feel more comfortable, because you remind them as you get older, you're going to need to talk to the doctors by yourself. When you get a little bit older, you might actually want to just talk to the doctor without me around, which a lot of our kids get to the point where it's like, hey, Mom, don't you dare come into the doctor's office with me. So, and again, like if your child is afraid of shots or whatever, get them to feel comfortable to be able to express, you know what, I'm scared of this, even though they still have to get their shots. When we're looking at tutoring, I always think it's really important to gear tutoring toward the child ultimately being able to do the work alone or knowing when to ask for assistance. So, and what I mean by that is it's kind of like they're sitting there and they're working with the tutor, and the tutor sort of explains things to them or represents something and then says, okay, now try this on your own. And make sure that the child can do it on their own. And then maybe, again, you say, do 2 problems on your own. Now try 3 problems on your own. And you provide the corrective feedback. The tutor provides the corrective feedback. Or that the child is able to go in and say, I don't understand this. So, again, with the client I was talking about, who I'm trying to get him to talk to his math teacher, he failed his last 2 math tests. And he got the tests back, and I said, were you able to figure out what went wrong when you got your tests back? And he said, no, I still don't know what I did wrong. I look at the problems, and all that the teacher did was, put an X through it, or it says -1, -2, and I don't have any idea what I did wrong. Okay, that's what we need to solve. We need to figure out, because your tutor won't know how to help you unless we know what it is that you don't know. And so that's why, sitting down and reviewing the tests and figuring out, oh, here's where you made your mistake. I'm sure you guys probably all already have this, but if your child does have one-on-one support in school, it's really important that that one-on-one support has a fade plan to some level. It doesn't mean that the child doesn't, like the next year isn't going to have an aide or something like that this all has to be done within 12 months, but that there's some level of the child being independent written into that one-on-one plan, so that the child realizes, hey, I can do some of this on my own, or we're giving the child the opportunity to do something there on their own. And I know for some parents it's been really difficult because a lot of times children get to the point where they no longer do need one-on-one assistance. But in an IEP, the parents sometimes will say, well, but I don't want to give it up because what if when I take that aid away, the child's behavior becomes worse or he's not able to keep up anymore academically and then I'll never get it back. And that is a big concern, that when you let go of a service or you let go of a support, if the child needs it again, that you won't be able to get it back. And I don't know that there is a good precedent to say you won't be able to get it back if it really is needed. But oftentimes what we find is that when we do, when the whole team decides that the child no longer needs the support, that oftentimes the child can really surprise you because they really don't need the support anymore, and we can fade it out. But if you feel like I don't, I'm not ready to let this go, figuring out, well, what is the fade plan? What are your expectations for the child to let it go? I was working with a child who had a one-on-one aide, and I really felt like he didn't need the one-on-one aid at the school anymore. The school felt that the parents didn't want to give it up for a variety of reasons. And at one point, a child on the playground came up to me and said, "Why are you always here? He doesn't have any problems." And I thought, this is the perfect time to fade away, because if his social circle says he's just like the rest of us, then it's now time he's able to navigate, and he's actually been able to function okay without one-on-one support, and hasn't had any of the difficulties that he used to. But it took a while to get there to that point where we all felt like, okay, we really do know that he will be okay without it. I think that if you're the one that's doing all the organizing and planning and everything for your child, try and figure out, how can I fade myself out? The same way as an IEP might have a fade out plan, we might need a fade out plan for mom and dad too. At what point do you say, you know what, I'm not going to be the one to call your friends anymore. You can call your friends on the phone. Talking on the phone is really difficult. In my social skills groups, by the way, we have our kids making phone calls all the time, because it's really, really scary. And I get it, because I'm a person that doesn't like to talk on the phone if I don't know the person. I'm happy, I'll never stop talking with a friend, but I don't like having to call, let's say, the doctor's office or something like that. And I just don't like it. I always think the other person thinks that I'm an idiot, and I kind of have to practice what I'm going to say a couple of times before I call. And I'm always honest with all my clients too, and say, you know what, I don't really like it, but guess what, I have to, because nobody's going to do it for me anymore. And my dad can't call for me anymore. I gotta do it. Again, I have a lot of kids who are 12 years old, and I'll say, what are you going to do this weekend? And they say, well, I don't know, I think my mom has invited a friend over or something. And it's like, wow, do you want the friend to come over? Yeah, I'm really excited he's coming over. It's like, okay, how about next time you be the one to make the phone call, or you be the one to invite the child? So again, we're finding out, you know what, our kids can do all this. We might need to say, why don't you give Johnny a call? That's fine, but we're not the ones that are continuing to make the phone call for the child and invite them and set up all of their play dates and stuff like that. And again, sometimes what that might mean is your child comes to you on a Saturday and says, I'm really bored, you didn't plan anything for me. And it's like, oh, I know, because you're 12, and I think you can plan some things yourself. What would you like to do today? Who would you like to hang out with? That's great. Here's his phone number. Give him a call. And you can do all of that kind of stuff. I'm sure all of you are familiar with visual charts. I'm not gonna really talk about them, except for that we have worked toward, with many kids, trying to get them to be the ones to kind of design their own visual charts. So not so much design it as in they're drawing it, but that they're the ones that are putting all the icons on. Here's the order of the way that you're going to do things today, or they're the ones who write it out each day. Here's how I want to organize my homework and everything. We do a lot of times really want to give kids the feeling of control over their own homework. So that is, you've got 3 different things that you have to do for homework. Which do you want to do first? Kids have different ideas. All of us have different ways. Some kids like to start with the really hard stuff and then end with the easy stuff because it's kind of a reward. Other kids obviously want to put off doing the hard stuff for as long as possible. And I really will encourage parents to let their kids make that decision, organize their homework themselves, and find out for themselves whether their methodology worked or not. That sometimes leaving the hardest stuff for the end means that it didn't get done. And then they can use that to help problem solve and say, okay, maybe I need to get the hard stuff out of the way, and then the easy stuff, it gets done much faster, so it's okay if I only have half an hour to do it or something like that. So they start to get a better sense of time. A question that's come up with from a couple of parents for me a couple of times is, when my child's done with their homework, I look it over, I help them, I make sure that they've got the right answers, and I'm correcting their homework for them. And the problem with that is that sometimes then the homework comes back and it's done perfectly, and the teacher thinks, oh, the child knows all of this stuff, and then they give a test or something like that, and the child doesn't know, and the child doesn't do well, and the teacher doesn't always know, oh, that's because he actually wasn't able to do this work independently. He got all the answers right. I had one family where they were constantly sort of like rewriting the child's reports for him. And then when it came time for the state testing on writing, he didn't do very well. And the school was kind of like, well, maybe it was test anxiety. And it was actually, no, he actually hadn't been doing the homework himself, that the parents were doing it. And we all do our kids' projects. I mean, all of us have done the mission projects for our kids and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But there comes a time for which we need to be able to say, maybe you want to re-look at this one, maybe you want to try this one again rather than telling them what the answer is and everything, and helping them, or maybe we let the teachers know, what, we corrected this, but here's what he was struggling with, or the child can go in and say, Mom helped me with my homework, but I really still don't understand how to regroup, whatever it is. I do think once kids are able to, all kids need to know their own goals. I'm still surprised at how many clients I have that I say, do you have an IEP? Yes. Great. What are your goals? No idea. What are your accommodations? I don't know. What's an accommodation? So kids should know, if they know they have an IEP, they should know what's on it. They don't have to be able to, I think that there's actually somewhere in the education code it says like children with IEP should know all of their goals. Well, some of our kids have 19 goals, and you don't even know all of them, so we can't expect the child to memorize their goals. But I think more like, I have a goal to improve my addition. I have a goal to understand what I read better, and I go to Miss Smith to get extra help for that. And I'm allowed to have my tests read to me and things like that, because when you do graduate and go to any type of college, you have to tell them what accommodations you need. And it is the child. Again, that's one of the areas where many colleges say we don't want the parents coming in and telling us what the child needs. The child has to say it themselves. So I think as early as possible, the children should know what their goals are and what their accommodations are. What are the things that you need? Another thing that is always important is that all kids kind of understand what the meaning of the word fair is, because again, like in the story that I read you in the beginning, where the young man said, you know what, I don't want to be known for my disability, I want to be known for my work, so I'm not going to ask for any of these accommodations. And unfortunately, like I said before, I have a lot of clients who have said that they've chosen not to give these letters to their professors because they want to do their work on their own. And I hate to say this, but a lot of those kids have not then been successful because they're not getting what they need. So oftentimes I'll explain to them what the definition of fair is. And the definition of fair is not that everybody gets the same thing. The definition of fair is everybody gets what they need. So oftentimes I will say to them, you know what you need to use a calculator? You're allowed to use a calculator. There's no reason to not do that. The same way as if you needed to wear glasses, You wouldn't say, well, I want to be just like everybody else and not wear your glasses and not be able to see. So you're willing to wear glasses, you were willing to do all of these other things. You need this, you need that. It's fair that you get it. It doesn't make you any less of a person, and it also doesn't make you your disability. That your work will still shine through, you just have to use a calculator to do it, or you needed extra time. So, I have a lot of clients who have always had extra time on assignments, and then they go to college and they say, well, I don't really know if I need it, and so I'm not going to ask for it. And I always say, but did you get your assignments done on time when you were in high school? No, because I had. And they'll always say, it was because I had extra time. It's like, but you knew when it was due and you still needed all of that extra time. It might be a good idea to just continue to ask for it. You don't have to use it, just like you didn't have to use it in high school. But it's always good to have it. But that can be really difficult for some of our students to understand. Again, like I said before, really, how does your child envision their future? Can they envision their future? Do they have any sense of this is where I want to go? Because if they can't, then it is important that you kind of figure out where do I think my child can go, and that you help. You can't give your child their vision for the future, but some kids, like I said, they really don't have any vision for the future, and you need to try and figure out, well, again, what is going to motivate you and what are the things that you want to do. We start off with the concept of being able to be organized and being able to get ready. I just think it's so important that kids know how to get themselves, we're talking about high school kids now, that they know how to get themselves up, that they know how to get themselves dressed, that they potentially know how to make their own breakfast, that they know how to do all of this kind of stuff. This is all really important because these are things that should they go to college or should they go and live outside of the home, they're going to need to do that. Cooking is a really difficult thing. Again, for a lot of parents, it's a safety issue. So it's kind of like, well, I know that he knows how to cook, but, with his ADD and stuff like that, he just forgets to turn the oven off and it's on all night or whatever. These are all safety issues. And so if that's the case, then what are the supports that you might be able to put in place so the child would be able to cook for themselves? But, do you need something that says turn the oven off that's then posted on the oven? There's nothing wrong with that because a lot of you might post things. I, again, happen to have a tendency to not turn out a closet light because the light switch is outside of the closet. So once I close the closet door, I kind of forget. And I, want to save electricity, be a good person and everything. So I had to put a little sign that said, remember to turn out the closet light, because otherwise I was just forgetting all the time. That's completely okay for me to do, so it's completely okay for your kids to do too, to say, remember to turn off the flame, remember to do all of this if that's what they need to do. Thinking about, again, I think I've kind of already said all of this except for the very last point here, which is that for some of our kids, they think asking for help is a sign of weakness. Asking for help is a sign of intelligence. When you know that you need help and you can seek it, then you will be successful. But if you don't seek help, then things might not change. You might not learn how to do this. You might wind up not being successful in whatever endeavor you're doing. So you need to feel comfortable to ask for help. And how do you ask for help? That's really difficult. Hopefully the school is helping facilitate all that too if the child still is at school. One of the things we know about helping kids develop resiliency is that when we praise effort over accuracy, kids are more likely and more willing to try challenging tasks. So that is, if we're able to say to our kids, you know what, you tried your best. It doesn't matter whether they got 50% or 100%. But if we always focus on, wow, you got 100%, you're a straight A student, the minute they get that first B, they are devastated. And that's not really what we want them to do, because we want them to feel really comfortable to try their best. There might be a time when a particular class is going to be difficult for them, and a B might really be the best that they can get at that moment. And there's no reason to be upset with that. We don't want the kids to be upset with that. So being able to say, you know what, you tried your best. You did all of the work. You worked really hard. I saw you studying every single night. I couldn't ask for anything more than that. Then the kids are more likely to try challenging tasks. And they're more likely to persevere when they think, this isn't as easy as I thought it was. If we focus on accuracy, they're less likely to try and to persevere on challenging tasks. Being able to do some early discussion of what is needed for them to go to college or to have a job. And again, when you ask kids, oftentimes, what are the job expectations? You'll get things like, well, you have to be on time and you have to do your job. Well, okay, but what are some of the other things that you think are expected on a job, or what do you think is going to be different in college than in high school? And of course, a lot of kids just don't have any sense of this, the same way as I think for a lot of us, we really forget how different high school is from college, because they're just so different, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of good role models on TV and stuff like that in terms of young people in college and everything. There's just most of the stuff that we see, unfortunately. Like if you look at most of the sort of teen-oriented shows where the kids are either in high school or college, they actually never go to school. They're actually never in class. There's a party every single night. This is not reality in any sense. And our kids watch this and they think, oh, school is really fun. Apparently there is no school. It's the same way as a lot of these kids never have any parents either on these shows. So unfortunately, our kids they have no role models for this, because think about it. Think about a show where the kids actually are really going to college and really studying that isn't a comedy, and it's really hard to find where this kind of stuff is. So they're not getting a good sense of what this is. Again, kids knowing their own strengths and weaknesses. So I ran over the summer a college prep group for a bunch of kids on the spectrum who were leaving and going to college. And one of the things that I said, okay, how do you guys learn? What type of a learner are you? And every single one of them said, I'm a visual learner. And it's like, okay, how do you know that? And it was kind of like, well, that's just what's been said to me. I'm a visual learner. And then we did a couple of tests, and a lot of them found out that they're actually not visual learners. They actually learn much better through auditory channels, or they learn much better through tactile means. And this was really eye-opening to a lot of them, because they're like, oh, we just assumed that we were visual learners. And a lot of kids on the spectrum are visual learners, but just because you're on the spectrum doesn't mean you're a visual learner. So it's important for the students to know this is the type of learner that you are. Almost all of your kids have probably been assessed. They've had psychological testing, whether it's neuropsych testing, a psychoed, but they've had these types of evaluations. So you can sit down with your kids, because again, this is going to be expected if they do go to college, when they meet with the Disabled Student Services, that they're able to say, I am a visual learner, I have real difficulty listening and looking at the same time, I have difficulty taking notes and listening. I did have one student who was able, who, when he met with the college offices, he was able to say that he has a really difficult time taking notes, but he can't bring a laptop because then he just gets too distracted by it, and it's just too difficult for him. And so he was given a note taker, which made complete sense. Now, when you get a note taker, mind you, in college, you have to be present in the class and you have to be listening. So you can't go to class and just play, Candy Crush or whatever that game is called, and have somebody take the notes for you. But the fact is he knew, if I have a laptop in there, I'm going to wind up doing something else. I'm going to wind up, writing a script or something, whatever it was that he wanted to do instead. And so he was able to actually tell the Disabled Student Services that would be a problem for him and get the right accommodations for him. Prior to going to college, the things that can be put into place. Most kids need to be tested depending on when their last triennial was. A lot of colleges will say we want more recent testing. Also, colleges want actual IQ testing, and some school districts don't do IQ testing. So they may have given an IQ equivalent, but they don't actually do like the WAIS, the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scales. So the school district will request that. And again, I think that's really important. It's something that I do. I do that testing to help kids get into college and decide what accommodations they need, but I always make sure that the student is the one that gets the feedback. Obviously, moms and dads are more than welcome to be there, but I make sure that I'm giving the feedback directly to the student about this is what your scores were, this is how you learn, these are your areas of strength, these are the areas of weakness, and here's the accommodations that I think you should ask for, which ones are you comfortable asking for, which ones are the ones that you want. I think it's really helpful to do real life practice, do a lot of role play with your kids about going into the disabled student services, what it's going to be like and everything, so that they're prepared for it. Because again, there are some colleges where you won't even be able to go into the room with your child. They have to go in completely alone and talk to the people in the office by themselves. So we do a lot of role plays to get ready for this. And try and figure out what are the questions that are going to be asked, what are the questions that would be most intimidating for them. And for some kids, they're really good at explaining what they need, and for other kids it's really hard for them. Again, they just feel intimidated by, I don't want to have to say that I need all of this. So we work on getting them to feel more comfortable, and sometimes we have to start this at about 10th grade, because we might decide as a team that it's going to take that long to get the child to feel comfortable to talk about these kind of things, or to really get them to understand what their own strengths and weaknesses are. Discussing with students what the difference is between high school and college, and then also talking about what are the living arrangements going to be if your child is going to college. Will they continue to live at home? Will they live in the dorms? Will they have a roommate? A lot of colleges nowadays have single rooms, which a lot of kids on the spectrum choose to have instead of having a roommate, because they may have never shared a room with anybody before, and it's pretty difficult. And so, what are the different things? Or do they want to have communal living? What are the options that are there? Some parents are opting to rent an apartment close by and have a couple of older kids kind of live in, mentor their student as they start off in college. Some of the things that we want to keep in mind, the differences between high school and college. First of all, kids are used to being in high school and throughout their school career that their teachers just know everything about them, and they know who they are. And half the time your professor has no idea what your name is, and they might not even want to know your name. They don't call you by name, they don't know anything, it's just you and you and you. So that's different. They don't know your background. Your teachers oftentimes do. They know your siblings, they've met your parents, they know whether you have pets, they know all of these different things about you. And then you get to college and the professors don't know anything about you, and they may or may not have interest in learning about this. A lot of times it depends on what the class is, the class size. And a huge difference for these kids is the difference in how much time is spent in class. Because in college, classes might only be 3 hours. You get 3 hours of math a week. That's it. Where they're used to being in school 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Right? And that doesn't happen in college. Sometimes you have whole days off. Sometimes you have a class at 8 a.m. and then you don't have another class till 4 a.m. And what are you going to do in the meantime? And are you going to leave campus? Or are you going to stay on campus? It's a very, very, very different. And that means there's a lot more time spent learning on your own. So the professor lectures, but you're supposed to take those notes and study them. You're supposed to read the textbook on your own. You're supposed to be able to kind of teach yourself this stuff. And some of our kids have never had that experience. They haven't really had to teach themselves things. They're used to the teacher standing up there and explaining everything to them. And that's not necessarily going to be an option in college anymore. Kids have a lot more leisure time, which isn't always the best thing for our kids, because it does mean that you can get completely lost in a video game. And I have lots of clients that have the best intentions, but they sit down and they get onto Facebook or they get onto YouTube, and next thing they know, it's 10 o'clock at night, and they really have not been aware of the time passage. And they've missed their classes. And it's like, oh no, what do I do? You miss one class, and it's very different than being absent for one day in school. You miss one class in college, and you could miss like an entire explanation, and the professor's never going to go back over it. Like, he had one shot to explain this concept or talk about this poem, and the next time you have that class, he's moved on, and now you've missed that entire class, which is something that, again, our kids aren't necessarily used to. Attendance isn't taken. It's all on the honor system, which they're not used to. The expectation is that you show up to class, but attendance isn't taken. No, there might be a section or something like that where they are taking attendance, but in most big college classes, they don't take attendance. You're responsible. If you miss the class, you have to figure out how to get the work. Usually your professor won't give it to you. You have to turn to a peer and ask the peer, can I borrow your notes, or something like that. You need to figure out, go if you have a tutor, which of course you can also have tutors at college. In college literally means average. That means that you are at the top of the bell curve. Most colleges grade very differently than high school, where in high school, if you do well, you get an A. If you've learned third grade material, you don't usually get a C, you usually get an A. But in college, if you've just done what you're supposed to do and you're not like at the top of the class, you don't get an A. And so that's been really difficult for a lot of my clients too, who are A students, go off to college and, they're doing well, so they get a C. And it's like, but why? To them that's like failing the class. And it's actually, well, that isn't actually failing. This is what it is. Colleges are done. It's, like 90 to 100% is an A. And then and it doesn't matter. Maybe nobody got an A in the class. It's not necessarily graded on a curve. And so for some of our kids, they're not used to that type of grade either, and they have to get used to what all of that means and understanding how grades are different in college. In college, the student needs to seek out help when their grades are poor. So if they're not doing well, typically in high school, if the child isn't doing well, the teacher will usually either contact you or will say to the student, let's figure out what's difficult. A team will convene. People will talk about, these are the supports that you need. And that's not going to happen in college. In college, the expectation is if you didn't do well on a test, that you turn around and go to the professor and say, I'm not sure what I did wrong, or how can I get help, or something like that. So again, there's that high level of independence, and there's that expectation that the child will do the problem solving. The student will do the problem solving rather than the professor. There's way less homework, so there's less frequent feedback about whether you do or do not understand the concepts. And that's another thing that's really different. In high school, our kids are getting constant feedback. You are learning this, you are not learning this, you didn't understand the concept. I look at your homework every single night. Most of your kids, if you have high school kids, I'm assuming that your kids probably have homework every single night. But once you get into college, again, it's pretty rare actually that you sort of have homework. It's like your homework might just be study for the test. Okay, here's the notes. And I know you only find out at midterms whether you really did or did not learn the information. And that is really difficult. So we have to prepare our kids for this too. How are they going to know whether they're learning the material or not? Because they're not necessarily going to have any test to get that feedback from. As we talked about before, there's a lot of flexibility in scheduling. This is a positive thing. This means that if your child is not good at getting themselves out of bed early, it's highly possible to arrange your college schedule so you never have classes that start before 2 p.m. And you know what? Again, if your child knows I'm not an early bird, then make sure that they know when they're signing up for classes that they're looking for the latest classes they can find. Because signing up for a 7:30 a.m. class and thinking, I'll be able to do that, doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but not always. So it's a positive thing that they actually get to schedule their classes. And oftentimes, especially for some of those core classes, they get to pick the times that the core classes are offered multiple times throughout the day. So then they get to pick what time would work best for them. Oftentimes the professors will not talk to you under any circumstances. They will not talk to you. I have had a situation. I was teaching classes at a university. This was back in New York, and I had a student who withdrew from my class. Fine, you withdraw from the class. It makes no difference to me. And the father called me up and he said, I want you to reinstate my child. I didn't want him to withdraw from the class. And I had to say, he's 18. I can't reinstate him because you've said so. He needs to do it. He's an adult. He's the only one. Because remember, if your child's not conserved, they're the ones who are signing all the paperwork. And so if a child withdraws themselves from the class, a parent calling me can't change that. The child has to be the one, the student has to be the one that comes in and says to me, I want to be reinstated in the class. So the issue wasn't, can you be reinstated? It's that I can't do it because the parent says, once the child is over 18 and they're not conserved, the parent doesn't have any legal right to say, my child has to go to this college class. They no longer can do that. That was a family discussion that they needed to work out and figure out. And then finally, again, students can make any decision that they want once they're on campus without your permission. So again, they can decide to withdraw from a classroom if they want to, or from a class. And you won't have the opportunity. You can call the college and you can try and say, I don't want my child to withdraw, but again, they have the right to make that decision since they are an adult and they get to make their own decisions that way. Just the final thing that I was going to say, just a few things about housing, is obviously if you haven't started the conversation with your kids about, what are their desires? Do they want to live outside of the home? Do they want to live with roommates? Do they want to live on their own? What do they want to do? You want to start having that conversation, and you also want to start looking around at what your options are in your area for housing. Oftentimes, like I said before, kids don't know what it really takes to kind of live independently. What does it take to run a household and stuff like that? So I think that if your goal is that the child is going to be able to live independently or live with roommates, because just because they live with roommates doesn't mean that their house is going to be clean, their laundry is going to be done, or anything like that. So you still need to be able working on all of those types of things. What are the skills like that you want your child to be able to have, and what are the ones that they're going to need to live in the environment that we all have decided is going to be the best for them. There's lots of there's a lot of support services out there through Regional Center to teach daily living skills if there are things that you still think that your child needs to work on. So if your child is a client of Regional Center, you can get those services. And then there's also programs like there's Advance LA through the help group and everything that actually comes into the home and helps teach daily living skills to students, whether they're about to go off to college, whether they're about to we just kind of want to get them ready to move out of the house. So there, you do have some choices there of people that can come in. It's obviously, the more somebody can come into the house and teach the skills in the house, the better. You can have your child in a school where they might have a washing machine and a bed that they can make, but it's just not always the same thing as really learning it in the environment that you expect the child to do it. Unfortunately, as you guys probably know, those of you who have looked into housing, there's not a lot of options out there. And one of the things that's happening is a lot of parents are banding together, and they're the ones who are kind of saying, you know what, we're going to buy an apartment complex and we're going to turn this into like a supported living environment for children with special needs, children with autism, or they buy a house and several young adults get together and they all share that house with support staff. And these are the, this is sort of how industrious a lot of parents are, as you guys all know. Because there just are not a lot of options. And so there are still group homes, but oftentimes some group homes are kind of going the way of institutions, and they're just not as available as they used to be. And I do know several people actually who are in the process of looking at buying up some apartment complexes and turning them into almost like senior living homes, but it would be all designed for kids on the spectrum, that would include things like sensory gardens and stuff like that, so that kids could have the feeling of living alone, but there's still the support present. But this is all parent driven, unfortunately. It's not like there's good funding for that. Whether that's something that Regional Center would fund or not, I don't know. That might be a battle that has to be fought pretty soon if Regional Center doesn't fund that. There are, independent living skills care facilities that can be involved in all of these that might check in with your child all day long or check in periodically. So I know one client that has ILS services who come in the morning to make sure that he was able, to get up and get himself going, and then they come at night and make sure that he's taking care of all the things that he needed to do, that he paid his bills, that he did all of that, everything like that has happened. But otherwise the child is independent. He's not a child anymore. Otherwise the young man is independent during the day. And so the last thing that I'm going to say here is we do need to look at independence early on, as I said. The supports can vanish as your kids get older. Like when you think about putting your child in college or letting your child live independently and stuff like that, it might seem like the supports all vanish. But a lot of our kids can really thrive as long as we prepare them, and as long, again, as we do have some options available in our area for where our kids can go when they're ready to become independent. And also, you're not alone. Many people have gone before you. Many people, the autism community is one of the best communities, in my opinion, in terms of being real advocates and everybody being out there trying to support each other, whether it's through Facebook pages or whether it's through parent support groups like this, and everything. So there are and my feeling is that the parents who have already gone through this are always your best resource for, what worked for you, what were the agencies that were really helpful, were there colleges that were more understanding, all of that kind of stuff, because parents can be your best resource, the ones who have gone before you. I feel like you educating yourself on what's out there, what your child needs, and then turning around and educating your child on all of this. Even if it is to say to your kid, I know that you want to live independently, but you're not able to drive, and you're not able to take the bus by yourself yet, and you're not able, to pay bills, and you're not able to do your own laundry. So what are our options going to be here? Because there's not just a place that you can go to. There's not an apartment complex right now that you can move into where somebody's going to do that for you. And I think it's great that you want to live independently, but here's the things that we're going to have to get into place before you can do that. And of course, letting go is never easy, and it might be that we never fully let go, but we can loosen our grip just a little bit. And I know it's not easy, but we can do it.